Hello, good morning, afternoon, evening, or whatever time zone you're in. This is Giovanni Vinala Acosta, and this is my presentation on our recent lecture on burnout and overtraining. Who am I and my goal for this presentation? I am a transfer student from St. Petersburg College, a current junior in the exercise science program, and today I will be sharing 5 interesting topics from our reading and lecture on burnout and overtraining. With the characteristics of burnout in relation to sports and overtraining, it is very clear that a lot of it comes down to a feeling of exhaustion, both mentally and physically, and maybe in a sense, even spiritually. The characteristics noted in our lecture were exhaustion, sports evaluation, reduced sense of accomplishment, and compromised health. And it can be assumed that athletes of all ages and skill levels can deal with these sort of symptoms of burnout because of their sport. Adding on to the characteristics of burnout, there are some actual physiological signs and symptoms. Like any predisposing condition, there is an onset of signs and symptoms. Recognizing these physiological symptoms can really be vital to those who are managing the athletes. So some of the things to look out for as the athlete themselves or a trainer are things like poor performance, weight loss, fatigue and tiredness, poor recovery, and even vulnerability to illness or injury. As you can see in the little photo, the guy's just tired, and a lot of it comes down to like a physiological always being on the go, especially as an athlete, and probably the amount of exercise and training that they're doing. As we mentioned in the last mini project, the mind or psychology of an athlete can really affect their performance. I just find it so interesting how involved our brain is, how we think of ourselves is in our day to day life and even in our sports. So, further delving into this, there are also psychosocial signs and symptoms with that feeling of burnout from overtraining. Things like low energy, poor concentration, sports devaluation, low self esteem, and even emotional isolation or instability. Being able to recognize these things as the trainer, psychologist, parent, or even the partner of any athlete of any level can really be important to keeping that individual safe and high spirited to continue on. One of the more interesting things that I never really considered is how the sports professional themselves can also be tired. All of those physiological and psychosocial symptoms can burden them as well, just as much as the athletes. Individuals like coaches, fitness instructors, officials, and sports administrators can experience these things. One of the things that comes to mind when hearing this is like that generic scene in the movies where the coach is just tired of his players not complying or screwing up like a certain play, and then he blows his gasket. He yells at the team and he just storms off the field. That may be a sign of burnout. With that being said, I think it's important to mention how the athletes, coaches, the staff, and loved ones can work together to pick each other up and lift each other's burdens. Fighting alone is definitely one of the most difficult things to do. And finally, one thing is to recognize something, and another is to do something about it. Uh, these are some of the helpful ways to intervene and reduce the risk of burnout. In our reading, there were some helpful strategies to possibly combat the risk and reduction, and I think it all starts with communication. If you are not able to communicate with your coach, or vice versa, if you're not able to communicate with your athlete, the training and the cooperability is going to be even more difficult. Things like monitoring critical states in the athletes and fostering an autonomous, supporting coaching space can help. Also, things like setting sort of long term and short term goals for competitions and practice and at the end of the season are really good strategies to combat this feeling of burnout from overtraining. And of course, with all things considered, the readings and this presentation has been really helpful on finding out more about burnout and overtraining. I hope that my 5 things piqued your interest, and thank you for listening. Take care.